Here, I brought a gift for you. Salt. Well, what are you waiting for? Open it!
I have a feeling that you've had a hard time getting to our church. A real hard time.
Hey, mind who you're talking to. I'm a God-fearing man. But it was foggy that night.
Who is that Ikotka?
He's an alcoholic.
Was he also asking about your daughter?
Well, what do you expect? This Asetko's been riding that one for 7 nights straight. What a mess.
Right.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Thank you for not sharing any more of...
Let's go.
Maybe you've seen a friend of mine.
I heard he's gone missing.
People said he went on a binge. Accidents happen. Can't avoid them.
They say there used to be a party every day.
The police don't care.
Likes to have a drink, the rascal.
We started working it. Day and night.
That's what I'm talking about!
I was told you can help me deal with spirits.
Where can we find her?
Ask her herself.
Hold this here. Come on. Heave! Now you tell her what she wants.
We have Lucadia.
Is that why you started smoking? Is she out of her mind? We can't leave this chort alone.
I'll show you, Jorts. Don't forget who you're talking to.
I thought I'd walk with my head held high.
No man moves that way.
Where have you been all this time?
Gone on a drinking binge. You lift the baby.
I'm sure it's some kind of demon.
I'll show that evil spirit Russian strength.
And quickly toss it over your shoulder.
Oh well, at least my cow is still healthy.
Welcome back to Nomad in Gameland. Today we're continuing our Free on Epic Games series where we test out the free games thrown out by Epic Games every week to see if they're actually worth playing or if you miss it for free. We're going to discuss whether it's worth buying. As a disclaimer, we're not affiliated with Epic Games or the makers of any game. All of our reviews are completely independent. And today we are looking at Black Book, which will be free until the 24th of August on Epic. Surprise, surprise, another game I had never heard of. This is a card-based adventure role-playing game set in 19th century Russia. It is a gorgeous but somewhat unpolished experience where you'll be fighting and maybe controlling chorts, demons and other creatures from Slavic folklore. But enough with the introduction, let's jump straight in with the story. You'll be playing as orphan girl Vasilisa, who was raised by her witch grandpa. Her betrothed mysteriously commits suicide, and I'm assuming that because this is a sin in the Christian faith, it means he's going straight to hell. She can't get over it, she doesn't think he would do something like that, and she's gonna go get him back. Now, in order to do that, she needs to become a witch and collect 7 Dragon Balls. She needs to break all 7 seals on a magical black book. A magical black book that she gets from her adopted witch grandpa. Now, to open each of these seals, she's going to need to find a different demon to help out. And it seems like she's only got 40 days to do it before the guy's soul leaves the mortal world. And that is the premise. Along the way, you'll be helping or not helping the locals, meeting companions and doing their side quests. And of course, battling demons. Now I want to manage your expectations here. This game has a very slow start. In fact, I think the whole of chapter 1 is a bit of a slug. But just like a bunch of other games, I guess they just treat it like an extended tutorial anyway. But you should stick with it because I promise it gets better, and by chapter 2 I was hooked. And one of the main reasons for this is the super interesting and often quite dark folklore. Now, according to the game's website, all of this stuff is authentic folklore. They apparently got some academic to come help them keep it real. I don't know how much of that is true, but nevertheless, it's all incredibly engrossing. Now, I think the only other exposure I've had to this type of Slavic mythology is from the Witcher series. And so it was all rather refreshing for me to delve deeper into the stories from this part of the world. I mean, the idea of having a spirit of a bathhouse called a bannock. It is just so bizarre and foreign to me. I honestly loved learning about all of this stuff. And it can get pretty dark and twisted at times. This is not kiddie fairy tale stuff we're talking about here. We're talking famines, kidnap, death. And it's all fascinating to me. But the folklore also works really well here because it sends you to such immersive locations. Yes, Black Book is set in Russia, but you'll also be going to villages, forests, caves, and to hell itself. And this ties in strongly with the visuals, which I'll talk about later. The setting is one of the game's strengths. And the scene is bolstered by the fact that this game is heavily narrated, which gives it a great storybook or D&D-like feel. The voice actor for the main narrator is actually pretty good. The narration itself is pretty solid, but it can be overly descriptive at times. And of course this is an RPG, so there are choices available to you too, but with some of the side content this can be a bit predictable after a while. Some of the choices you have available to you are to avoid battles by playing cards or just walking around them. You've also got the option to be good or bad, like choosing to help someone. You have the option to curse people, you can steal money, you can kill creatures. And this all ties in with the sin system, which I'll touch upon later. The choices do make Black Book's story more nuanced, interesting and personal, but I don't think it has too much of an impact on much of the game. You will of course also meet some very interesting companions along the way, and they come and go during sections of the story. Now while this is some of the better content in the game with decent acting, interesting backstories and some quite funny dialogue, I would say the companions are a bit mediocre. To be honest, I never really felt connected to them or saw them as being friends of Vasilisa. I mean, I can't even remember their names. And I remember the words Rusalka and Vodianoi, so it's not a language thing. And the mediocre companions is a shame, because it could have teleported Black Book into a higher league where it probably deserves to be based on its other strengths. And on top of the companions, Vasilisa herself is not terribly interesting either. But I suppose with player choices and the sin system, which I'll touch upon later, it makes sense from a design perspective to keep her as much of a blank slate as possible. Moving on from the characters, the length of the game is actually quite impressive. In fact, I'm still playing. Normally I like to finish a game before I make a review about it, but I think I've got about half of the game left to go and I wanted to release the video while it's still free on Epic. But I'm also enjoying it so much that I don't want to rush it. I think Black Book has about 20 to 30 hours worth of content. And if you're like me and feel compelled to do all of the side content and companion quests, then it's more likely to be towards the 30 hours side of things. So please keep that in mind when we talk about value later. Now the last thing I want to talk about on the story is its delivery, primarily through its voice acting. Now you may have noticed from the intro of this video that the voice acting is a mixed bag, and it's got nothing to do with the different accents that you'll find throughout the game. I think those different accents actually adds a level of authenticity. My criticism lies in that a lot of the lines just feel forced, especially for the minor characters. Their companions do have decent voice acting and better dialogue to boot, but even they're a little off. The acting is not terrible, it could just do with a little improvement. And I don't want to be too harsh here because all of their dialogue is completely voiced, and I want to give massive credit for that. I just wanted to give you a heads up of what to expect from it. Before we jump into the gameplay, I have a quick favour to ask of you. Please don't forget just how unique and amazing you are. Alright, gameplay. Black Book has got a ton of combat and uses a card-based system. Each turn you have access to a bunch of cards to use, which can cause damage, raise a shield, buff or debuff, and a bunch of other effects. For some reason the game splits this into order cards and key cards. I'm not entirely sure why they needed this split, but hey ho. For the most part, combat is fun and somewhat challenging, at least at the beginning of the game. And curating your deck is vital to manage battles. Having said all that, this brings me to the first criticism of Black Book. First, the cards are explained poorly. There's no explanation given to you for a number of types of effects. At one point in the game, I acquired an item which would make earth cards. I still haven't figured out what that means. And for a system that has a lot of depth, Black Book needed to explain itself better. And because it hasn't, much of the depth is wasted. And in addition to the lack of clarity, there is a bit of an unbalance in the system. And once you can figure out what certain cards can do, you can cheese them over and over and remove the worst cards from your deck. I mean, it's still fun, but it does remove a lot of challenge from the game. So much so that I actually turned down the difficulty settings, except for when I was fighting boss fights. Not because it was too difficult, but that it was too easy and I wanted to get through the smaller fights more quickly. This does bring me nicely onto where the card system does shine, the puzzle battles and boss fights. The boss fights in Black Book are great and provide for a decent challenge. They also look great. The puzzle battles were my favourite though. In puzzle battles, you have to win the fight in a certain number of turns. Some of them you have to win on the first turn, and they fix the cards you have at your disposal. You have to figure out how to combine the cards so that you can win. Given that the game hasn't explained itself very well, this combining of cards can actually be quite challenging, and it could be that the developers wanted to use these puzzle battles as a form of tutorial, forcing you to experiment and notice the effects of certain cards. I'm not so sure though. Now, aside from an unbalanced card system, the game is very forgiving. If you lose a battle, you can just choose to simply start the battle again. And on the easy mode, I think there's an option to actually skip battles, and with an autosave, which applies to each location on the map. If you make a wrong or inconvenient narrative choice, it's very quick and simple to load and select another choice. This can potentially be a bit too forgiving, especially with things like riddles and selecting the correct answer to questions. But how many of us would normally save and reload before these moments anyway? I think it's a nice approach and comes in handy a bunch. I really like the approach the developers have taken with the map too. Apparently some of the maps are based on real 19th century maps of the area. You basically have to take one step at a time like you would on a board game. And on each step you open a new piece of narrative, with a choice, a battle or an item. What the map does nicely is tell you everything straight up. Here's where your objective is, here's where the side content is, and here's where you can find codex entries. No fuss, no muss. You do what you like and no backpedaling. I like the ease and transparency, especially since I like to do all of the side content before I continue with the main story. Now this is a role-playing game and there is a short skill tree. It's okay, there's not too much to it. You can increase the amount of cards drawn, the order/keys you can issue, how many items you can carry, stuff like that. Much more emphasis is actually placed on the deck building rather than the skill tree. And one particular path of the skill tree relates to one of the more annoying parts of the game for me, which is to do with your chores. Because Vasilisa is a witch, you can increase the amount of these spirits or demons that she has as her minions, and they like to create mischief, and if you keep them around you, they cause some not insignificant nerfs. For example, they may reduce your health or reduce your attack damage. So to prevent this, what you need to do is send them on missions to torment people. This gives you a chance to also get a small amount of money, but these missions make you accumulate sin. Now every time you make an evilish choice, you accumulate sin, and every once in a while if you make a nice choice, you lose sin. I think the amount of sin you have might affect the ending of the game. If I ever finish it, I'll let you know, but it's a bit tedious to keep sending these chorts out on missions. And if you're trying to play Goody Two Shoes too, it's annoying that you would have to spend skill points in order to reduce the amount of sin these guys generate. But on the topic of the sin system, I think there is an element of replayability. One where you're the Goody Two Shoes and one where you're just a bit of a douche. I don't know if the ending will change, but it might be worth playing the game at least twice to find out. Black Book is visually stunning and I loved it. Its simple, cartoony art style, coupled with great locations, means Black Book nails what's needed for an immersive atmosphere. Its simplicity also makes it timeless, and if you were to play it 20 years from now, it would still look great. The effects used when you cast spells complements the art style very well too. Chaining together a bunch of them with all the bright flashes looks great and makes Vasilisa look incredibly powerful. The illustrations of characters during dialogue are on point as well. The art style in Black Book elevates the whole experience, and you should check it out on that alone. I do have one teensy minor criticism though, and it's the faces. I mean, look at this monstrosity. They should just not have put faces on the character models. It would have worked without them, and I think they're just a bit off-putting. However, it doesn't take away from the beauty of the game. Complementing the aesthetic is the music in Black Book, which is fantastic too. It can be a bit confusing, considering some of the tracks sound like it's being sung by a choir, and that makes very little sense in terms of the story, but they're great nonetheless. Have a listen. Aside from these collectible tracks, the background music is pretty on point too. But I did have one audio issue in the game, which was that it was too quiet. Even with max everything in the in-game settings, I had to crank up my speakers way beyond what was normal. Not a massive issue, but it would be nice if they fixed it. All in all, the music, art direction, and the choice of environments make Black Book one of the best looking games I've played. In conclusion, Black Book is a great game and I look forward to completing it. It is unpolished and there's plenty of room for improvement, particularly in explaining itself, its voice acting, balancing its difficulty, better pacing in the early game, and the quality of its side content. But despite that, if you stick with it, it's a beautiful, interesting, funny game with a bunch of charm, and it's definitely worth you trying out. And because it's so easy for me to recommend, I'm adding Black Book as an actual saving on our table of savings. So congratulations to them! Just as a quick explanation, 3 games that are worth playing are considered actual savings and games that aren't worth playing are considered technical savings. Now, is it worth buying if you can't get it for free? The cheapest CD card I could find was about £1.30, and at that price I can confidently recommend the purchase. At full retail price of about £20, I'm less sure, but if you're a fan of the genre, I think it's a safe bet. And with that, I'm afraid ladies and gentlemen, it's time to say goodbye. I'd love to hear what you have to think about Black Book, so please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. If you liked the video, please give it a like. If you didn't, by all means give it a thumbs down. If you'd like to watch more reviews like this, please consider subscribing to a Nomad in Gameland. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.